Good morning everyone, welcome to this video Some Frontier video. My name is Jay Wakefield and today is April the 2nd at 35 minutes past 2 in the morning, or 25 minutes to 3, depending on which way you look at it. Now, I was given a request on a video to do just over a week ago, and because April the 2nd is Autism Awareness Day, I feel that this video will tie in quite well with all of that. So this video is on stimming and why it is common in people on the autistic spectrum. So the first thing you're probably going to be thinking is, well, what on earth is stimming? I've read the video title, I clicked on it because I want to ken what it is. Well, this term stimming is actually short for self-stimulatory behaviour. And don't switch off just yet, because if you're thinking what I'm thinking that you're thinking it is, then get your mind out of the gutter. Nah, this is a perfectly clean habit, so this video is family friendly, even though the term self-stimulatory behaviour kind of does sound a wee bit blue, shall we say. It's sometimes also called stereotypic behaviour, as the kind of behaviour is a stereotypy, rather than it being stereotypic to people with autism. However, in a person with autism, stimming usually refers to specific behaviours, such as flapping, which a lot of people are aware of, rocking, which is also quite common, or spinning. Or it could be repetition of words and phrases. Stimming is also almost always a symptom of autism. However, I would say that it's important to note that stimming is also a part of most people's behaviour pattern. Have you ever tapped your pencil on the desk, bitten your nails, or twaddled your hair, paced, or even drummed your fingers on the steering wheel of your car when stuck in a traffic jam or something? If you've done any of that, and I can guarantee you almost certainly have, you've engaged in stimming. The biggest difference between autistic and typical stimming are the choice of stim and the quantity, and I would say to some extent the intensity of the stim as well. While it's at least moderately acceptable to bite one's nails, for example, it's considered unacceptable to wander around flapping one's hands. There is really no good reason why flapping should be less acceptable than nail biting. I mean, it's certainly more hygienic. I speak to American people way too much now. Wouldn't have it any other way. I've got a lot of good friends across the pond. However, in our world, the hand flappers do receive negative attention while the nail biters are tolerated. Like anyone else, people with autism stim to help themselves manage anxiety, fear, anger, and other negative emotions. Like many people with autism may stim to help themselves handle overwhelming sensory input, too much noise, light, heat, etc. Unlike most other people though, individuals with autism may also self-stimulate constantly, and stimming may stand between them and their ability to interact with others, or take part in ordinary activities, or even be included in typical classrooms. A child who regularly needs to pace the floor or slap himself in the head is certain to be a distraction for typical students. It's not completely clear why stimming almost always goes with autism, though often it's called a tool for self-regulation. As such, it may be an outgrowth of sensory processing dysfunction that often goes along with autism. I mean, we all know that, it's quite well known that in autism, sensory overload is quite common, and it's not, and people on the autistic spectrum can experience sensory overload from things that neurotypical people are able to deal with without too much of an issue. At times, stimming can be a useful accommodation, making it possible for the autistic person to manage a challenging situation or challenging situations. When it becomes a distraction or causes physical harm to self or others, though, it must be modified. Learning or modifying stims can be tricky. Lessening or modifying stims can be tricky, but several approaches may be helpful. Applied behaviour analysis may help individuals to eliminate or modify some of their stimming. Occupational therapy is another useful tool. In some cases, stimming can be reduced with medication that addresses the underlying issues of anxiety. Finally, some people with autism can learn through practice or coaching to either change their stims, squeeze a stress ball rather than flat, for example, or engage in excessive stimming only in the privacy of their own homes. So, I mean, that is basically, that was an article from About.com from Lisa Jo Rudy, former About.com guide. And this was updated on October the 13th, 2009. Now, as some of you will know, I did go to a school for the visually impaired until it was shut down in 2002. Now, at that school, while it was primarily for people who were visually impaired, there was a lot of students at that school who actually had other disabilities, and I knew quite a lot of people on the autistic spectrum, so, I was no stranger to people kind of flapping hands, saying certain things over again, or, even playing, kind of the same sort of, music, or the same, electronic device that talks. I knew someone who used to kind of sing some sort of very small, very short Bonnie Tyler medley over again. It used to start with Total Eclipse of the Heart, and then it used to, and then halfway through it'd change and become I Need a Hero. But there are different types of stimming. Let me just kind of pull up another page here. I was actually reading through a few things before I did this video because, I know someone who stims by tapping, their feet. And it is quite funny because it's, with people on the autistic spectrum having having sensory awareness issues, one person's stim could be another person's trigger. So it's, it can be quite inconvenient. But there are many different types of stimming. These include visual, for example, blinking, looking at fingers, staring at a light, lining up, or spinning objects. You can have auditory, so snapping fingers, humming, grunting, echolalia, which is repeating words spoken by another person. How many of you are actually going to do that? Going to repeat that back to me, to the computer? Also, repeating rote phrases, as in, kind of set phrases that are etched in your mind, you're going to repeat them. So, they can also be tactile, so scratching, touching object, biting nails, or twisting hair. Taste. Licking objects or placing them in mouth. Now, I want to just kind of stop here for a minute because it is unfortunate that certainly in place, certainly in the more offensive parts of the United States, and yes, even the United Kingdom, people with disabilities are quite commonly known as window lickers. Probably due to some sort of self-stimulatory behaviour that, maybe one or more people with disabilities have actually displayed. Basically, I think the term window licker kind of comes from the idea of, in America, you would have your regular yellow school bus, and then people with disabilities would all ride together on a different bus. Now, this is only kind of my musings as to where the term window licker comes from. Stop me if I'm wrong, because I probably could be, but I did, I was kind of, trawling the internet one night. Now, people with disabilities in America would often ride on a special bus for people. Well, when I say special bus, I don't mean kind of special in the patronising way. Kind of on a different bus. Sorry, should I say? To the school. Now, oftentimes, because there are fewer people with disabilities travelling to the school, the bus was obviously smaller. So basically, that's where the term riding the short bus comes from. Oh, he's riding the short bus. Actually considered quite an offensive term. But of course, people who are disabled would talk about all the people with disabilities kind of licking the windows of the short bus. Now, I'm not saying people don't lick windows. It probably, is a good self-stimming behaviour for some people. It's probably, what they do. But you can't judge everyone by, one or two people. Some people, may lick windows. Other people probably don't. Personally, I don't know anyone who likes windows. And I certainly don't. And, to be honest, I would say that you should never use the term window licker, as it is considered highly offensive. But obviously, I'm just saying that saying has came obviously from, the idea of someone using that as a self-stim behaviour. Okay, there's also other stims. There's smell, as in smelling one's own body, objects, or other people. Nice. Then there's also vestibular. So this could be rocking back and forth, or from side to side, spinning, or pacing. Now, I've been known to pace quite often. That's something that I do when I'm worried. It's, people pace normally, but it's like, I'll really concentrate on it sometimes, especially when I'm in extremely stressful situations. Rocking back and forth, I know a lot of people. I actually, I was chatting to someone, and, they actually decided to, they were referring to the group of lower functioning people on the spectrum as the rockers. I was a wee bit upset by this. But then, of course, my warped sense of humour kicked in, and I kind of just then imagined all these people on the autistic spectrum, with long black hair, electric guitars, amps, that sort of thing. Rockers. But rocking is actually quite a common stim. I've known a few people who have actually rocked. Also, one that I used to do when I was wee was to swing my legs back and forward. And I remember that actually, at the at my old school we had dinner tables that would kind of fold on their side when they were finished with. You could actually just fold them away. And of course they had I'm just trying to think of the term. On the bottom, they had some sort. Basically, they had the legs, and then they had a metal beam kind of attaching, the two legs. Probably some sort of strengthening beam, and then on this beam there was the another metal piece that would actually that would swing around, and that would the ends of that would fit into kind of notches underneath the table, which would then hold it steady, flat, when it was in use. Now, when I was wee and obviously waiting on my dinner, I would quite oftentimes I would actually swing my legs backwards and forwards, kicking this larger beam under the table. Obviously, that's the kind of stuff I've grown out of. I mean, obviously, I can't well, my legs are now too long to be able to, swing backwards and forwards comfortably, but, I've kind of grown out of, like, the whole kicking stage. But, I mean, like I said, at my school, I mean, that sort of stuff was not necessarily uncommon, because we did have, a lot of students who were more, who were disabled, who had other disabilities as well as visual impairment. Back to the stems. We have proprioceptive. So that could include wrapping arms inside shirts, hand flapping, toe walking, which is actually quite common. I've seen it a lot on the Autism in Scotland group. And tapping fingers. And do you know what? Some actually count perseveration, not preservation, or aspie fixation on one or more special interests. And that is quite interesting, actually. I'm starting to wonder, would that be counting my interest in all computers? Are you calling my ThinkPad a STEMpad? Is this a STEMpad or a ThinkPad? STEMpad, ThinkPad. I'll put the STEMpad away now. And the person writing this article, she had, well, I don't know if it's a he or a she, but this person actually lists some of their stems, on the page. And she's actually written, well, I don't know if it's a he or a she now. I'm going to have to go. Oh yeah, it's a she. She's actually written, and this article is listed at www.journeyswithautism.com/2009/02/16/stemming. And this woman writes that, for me, stemming is a mode of self-soothing. It helps to calm my senses and acts as a barrier to stimulation from the outside world. When I first started learning about Asperger's and saw references to stemming, I couldn't believe my eyes. So many of the behaviours were the ones that I'd manifested as a child, and some had even come along with me into adulthood. My childhood home was constantly overstimulating. Loud voices, poor boundaries, erratic behaviour, and a TV that came on at 6 a.m. and went off at 11 p.m, so I needed a lot of soothing. Here are some of my childhood stems, she writes. I would lie in bed and squint at the light coming from the ceiling fixture at the centre of my room. I enjoyed seeing all the little rays of light that seemed to shoot out in all directions. Now, Rachel, I can identify with you there, because I've done that. And, I used to marvel how it would kind of look like a wee bird with extremely long wings. My goodness, it always made me kind of think of Zazu from The Lion King, but with a much longer wingspan. It was, I've done that. I loved lining, Rachel writes, I loved lining up objects such as different types of candy, dolls, coins, and baseball cards. I like spinning the wheels on my Tonka trucks far more than I enjoyed playing with the trucks themselves, and I still like looking at bright spinning things. I constantly twisted my hair by winding it around my fingers. It used to drive my parents up the wall. One of the recurrent imperatives from my childhood was, "Stop playing with your hair!" But I never gave it up. I mainly loved the softness of my hair and how the ends felt against the tip of my fingers. Do you know, I kind of play with my hair now as an adult, now that it's kind of grown long. I'm going to have to stop doing it because it's kind of making it flick out. But I had a pudding basing haircut back in the 90s. Everyone did. And, I used to love the way that, the step would, where I had long hair at the top and short hair at the bottom. I used to love the way the kind of step would feel. I had quite thick hair as a child. Back to Rachel. She writes, "Remember those big fat green number 2 pencils from grammar school? The kind where you could see lead on the bottom because there was no eraser? Every day in class I used to chew the ends of those pencils and lick the lead at the bottom. Between the lead-based paint and the pencil lead, it's amazing that I have any brain cells left. I always enjoyed wrapping my arms and hands inside my shirt or sweater. It made me feel very secure." I've done that. I do a more adult version of this stim now by putting my hands in my pockets when I'm out walking. When I wear a skirt or a jacket without pockets, my poor arms and hands feel forlorn and just don't know what to do with themselves. It makes me very nervous. I love to tap my fingers and do complex patterns, alternating fingers and counting in different sequences. The stim is another that pops up in my adult life from time to time. Then she's written her adult stims. Here are my adult stims, most of which I only do at home. Toe walking and hand flapping. I have no memory of doing either of these stims as a child, although I can vividly recall the day my principal told me to start walking by putting my heel down first. Clearly, I was walking toe first, but I soon stopped. I was a very compliant child. Twisting my hair, even though it's pretty short now. Counting the buttons on the TV remote control by tapping them lightly with my fingers in different patterns, pressing my fingers against the sides of each one and figuring out how many sets there are. The stim drives my husband nuts when we're watching a movie. He generally takes the remote control and holds my hand instead. Well, isn't that nice? Do you know, I've done that. I've been there with remote controls, kind of tapping out different patterns, not actually on the button, but there's different sets of buttons on my TV remote. I guess now an IBM Model M would be ideal for a stimmer, but not so ideal for the people around them, because kind of the clatteriness of the keyboard. I can imagine that could be quite infuriating. It could be. Actually, it's quite funny. I should actually bring that up because I got that keyboard because it's one of the best well, it is, in my opinion, the best computer keyboard out there. And it's really quite funny that the noise of the keyboard actually does a lot for me. As in, when I'm typing something on the internet, I feel that with every click of the keys, I feel that, in a way, not always, but in a way it can kind of let some of it out. If I'm typing something quite intense, and I'm really going for Scotland on it, and, all you can hear is clatter, 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 and it's, it's become kind of a let out for me. It's really quite odd. I did wonder if that would happen. But I would sooner have that happen than me kind of bashing the keyboard as I've done with other ones, because I don't want to damage this keyboard. Because obviously it's an IBM Model M. It should be treated with respect, and that they're not cheap. And it's, it's one of the original IBM Model M's as well, rather than one of the later Unicomp or Lexmark ones. Okay. Rachel also writes that she eats foods with soothing textures, like almond butter, peanut butter, and tahini. I've never heard of tahini, but... She says that she's been noticing lately that it's not the flavour I'm after with the food, but the texture. It's a tactile experience that makes the stim work. Riding my bicycle on a stationary stand. I like the repetitive circular motion. Looking at a magic wand with lights that spin when I push a button. Well, to be honest, I'm really very much into lights, so, or lights that change colour. I remember queuing outside a nightclub, and, it was a large queue. It was a Monday night, which for some reason seems to be a big night on the student calendar. It certainly did when I was at Hull University. I was actually queuing outside a club that used to be called the Waterfront, but it was then called the Sugar Mill when I started going. When I went, I've only been there the once. Inside it was too dark and too packed for my liking, but on the outside there was lights all around this nightclub. And they would go through different colours, and I was just pure fascinated by them. And obviously they'd be able to make a full spectrum of colours, a full gamut of colours, by basically having red, green and blue bulbs. Basically, creating colours in the same way your average television or computer monitor would. With red, a red pixel, blue pixel and a green pixel. And basically, one of the lights had the blue bulb out, so I was kind of fascinated how, all of them would be shining all sorts of different colours, but this one light alone would be, going between different shades of kind of red, brown, green and yellow. Although, to be honest, not really a favourite colour scheme of mine, if I'm honest, but I did prefer the ones with the blue lights, because you'd have all sorts of nice colours like purples and whites and blues and turquoises. I do kind of like lights like that. I'd love to one day kind of turn my bedroom into a sensory zone with, all kind of different ever-changing coloured lights, that sort of thing. Because I love to kind of stare at those. Rachel also writes that she likes organising objects of any kind, anytime, anywhere. Last time she saw her occupational therapist, she mentioned that engaging in proprioceptive systems includes putting different sorts of pressure on the joints. The right amount of pressure is very soothing. For this reason, weighted blankets, weighted vests, and other objects are very calming to autistic people. Rachel asked whether toe walking is soothing because of the pressure it puts on the joints. The OT said yes. And that toe walking puts more pressure on the joints per square inch than walking heel first. Hand flapping is also calming for basically much the same reason. So, weighted blankets, this is often talked about on the Autism in Scotland group. I oftentimes, if I'm sleeping with a bed up against the wall, I like to tuck the bed covers between the bed and the wall. When I was, my foster sister turned round and she was all, she basically, one day, I remember, she untucked my bed covers from the wall because she didn't realise that, I preferred it that way. And of course, I didn't realise that it was perfectly normal to like it that way. So she was like, Jay, you're going to have to untuck these, because I used to hate it. When I was a baby, she said, when I was a baby, I always used to kick the covers off. So, of course, back then I used to think, oh, well, it's not normal to enjoy being, that safety of being tucked in. turns out it actually is normal. You know, it's different preferences. And, you know, when I moved into student accommodation, I decided to buy a double quilt for a single bed, because basically, you know, I didn't like the covers coming off. You know, I used to kind of hate that. So, you know, I thought, well, if I buy a double quilt, you know, I'll not run out of cover. I'll not run out of covers. Run out of cover. But Rachel's OT said, Rachel writes, on the advice of my OT, I've been wearing a weight on each of my ankles and finding it very calming and grounding. I've also ordered a weighted blanket and a weighted vest. I'll post more about using them once they've come in the mail and I've had a chance to try them out. Like I said, you know, if you want to visit this page, go to www.journeyswithautism, that's all one word, .com/2009/02/16/stimming. Anyway, that is my video on stimming. I hope it's answered a few questions for you. I would like to thank the authors of About.com and Journeys with Autism, the authors and featured on About.com and on Journeys with Autism for the articles. And I would like to thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please subscribe to my channel. Instructions on how to do so will follow. And while you're at it, please feel free to peruse through my back catalogue of videos. And I hope you will all join me. Look at me with the hand stimming. Hope you'll all join me for my next video. Thank you for watching.